Places to go.
Hello and welcome to Places to Go. Today, with a trip underground, we're going to the old ossuary of Paris. We're going for a walk together in the catacombs of the French capital. It's an unusual place to go, but definitely one that's worthwhile and will leave a lasting impression. As always with Places to Go, we'll keep it short and sweet in under 10 minutes and tell you the story behind this place and what you should look out for on this underground walk. I'm Paul from the Plazy team. If you don't know Plazy yet, give it a try. On plazy.travel, you can have your very own personalized travel guide curated for selected travel destinations in Germany. It's quick, free, and absolutely uncomplicated, so give it a try. But now we're off to our eerily beautiful place to go, and to the bones of 6 million people buried underground here. That's 3 times as many as the population of Paris. This makes the catacombs in the Montparnasse neighborhood one of the largest historical ossuaries in the world. And the entrance is directly at the Place d'Enfer Rochereau metro station in Montparnasse. Here it's 131 steps down, then we're at the right level. It's a cool 14 degrees, no matter how warm it is at the top in the open air. And to really appreciate this place here, it's quite exciting to know how it all began. After all, it wasn't simply a case of looking for and finding a place for the bones. The catacombs have a literally harrowing history. It all started when the people of Paris lost the ground beneath their feet. In the middle of the 18th century, before the revolution, landslides occurred repeatedly. The ground sank away, and people in the city became afraid. There was panic, even rumors. But there was a physical reason for it all, because the ground around Paris and below Paris had been eroded for many years. Limestone had been extracted from large quarries since the 15th century, clearly for building purposes. And now, a few hundred years later, around 1750, this took its revenge. A solution had to be found. The solution was bones. This killed 2 birds with 1 stone in Paris because there was another problem, and that was a hygienic one. As the city's population grew, so did the number of people who died. The cemeteries became fuller and fuller. It didn't smell good, it smelled of decay. People were afraid of disease, and cemeteries had to be closed. So they thought about transferring the bones from the cemeteries to the old tunnels. The earth had to be supported and secured there anyway, and the bones were used for this purpose. In 1777, a separate department was set up for this purpose, the Service de Carrière, which had to take care of how the bones were transported from the cemeteries to the catacombs. This was rather delicate, because many Parisians didn't like the plan at all. That's why the reburials often took place at night, and in secret to minimize the publicity. Gradually, however, this procedure became established, and eventually bones from all the city cemeteries were brought here to the old limestone quarries below Paris, and in 1809, the catacombs were even open to visitors. They still are today, with over 500,000 people visiting them every year. Only a relatively small number of people are allowed into this labyrinth at any one time, which is why it is so popular. Make sure you book in advance. The link is, of course, in the show notes. The corridors down here are sometimes quite narrow. The labyrinth below Paris is much larger than the part you can see here as a visitor. The route that visitors can take here is 1.6 kilometers long and clearly defined, which means that you can't get lost here, but it's still a different world. And that brings us to the second topic. What do we actually see here? At the beginning, of course, there is the geological part. The exhibition tells us a bit about the historical quarries. But what makes this special, even morbid fascination are, of course, the vast quantities of bones. They are presented here in a very organized and decorative way. Individual types of bone form patterns here. For example, there is a heart made of skull bones in a wall of thigh bones. It wasn't like this from the beginning, when the bones from the cemeteries started to be stored here. They were simply dumped. But when it became clear that we wanted to make it accessible to the public, the decision was made to actually turn this place of the dead into something like a place of experience. A man by the name of Ricard de Thury, who was the director of the ossuary at the time and wanted to turn the catacombs into a monumental museum, was particularly in favor of this. Everything was sorted. Shin bones to shin bones, arm bones, skulls. At least in the first row, it made an absolutely tidy impression at the time and still does today, whereby the bones, some of which were splintered, were simply piled up in a jumble behind them. But of course you can't see that. And de Thury went even further. He had altars and crucifixes installed, and even a pathological cabinet in which bones with certain deformities are displayed. Some places here even have their own names. such as the famous Fountain of the Samaritan Woman. I think Ericard de Thury has turned it into something of a museum of death. In between, on the walls, you will always find verses of poetry like this one. Happy is he who still has the hour of his death before him, and yet is constantly preparing to die. Rather something for more serious minds. But there was also a lot of partying and socializing here, and we'll talk about that now. There was a lot going on here in the catacombs, we have to imagine. The reburials started in 1777, then everything was beautifully decorated, and in 1809, the catacombs were opened to visitors. At that time, new remains were still being added until the 1860s. The people who came here back then were not cemetery visitors who wanted to be near the remains of their loved ones. It was rather the allure of something special that drew Parisian high society here, and this allure has remained to this day. But back then, the catacombs were used as a venue for events. State visits took place here. In 1814, for example, the Austrian emperor came to the ossuary, or the later Emperor Karl, who spent time here with his ladies-in-waiting and even came before visitors were officially allowed. Today, you have to book tickets in advance, and back then, it was the same. There was a register, a registration list, and getting a place on it really meant something. It went so far that large concerts were organized here. In 1897, a whole orchestra came together here underground. Well, there was definitely already life here in the catacombs. And if you have that in your head, then you take this walk again with a completely different background. We can only recommend this underground tour. And as exciting as it is down there, the feeling of coming back out into the daylight after this walk underground and climbing back up the steps is really nice. By the way, you don't come out at the entrance. It's not a complete circular route, but it's only a few minutes to the metro. You'll also get to see a bit of Montparnasse, where Picasso and Chagall used to live. You can also listen to our other episodes about Paris. We highly recommend the Marais as a place to go, as a particularly beautiful neighborhood, and also the Bourse du Commerce as an exciting new art spot in the city, which incidentally displays the collection of multi-billionaire François Pinault. As always, we invite you to take a trip on plaisy.travel. Let us show you your personal places to go. So take a look at the destinations we have for you, and of course, we look forward to your nice comments and a nice rating. See you next time here at Places to Go.